Coming to you pre-recorded from the fiery bells of California. This is Optimal Play. I'm Brandon.
And I'm Steven.
How's it going, Steven?
Good. I just barely escaped the fires of Northern California, and now I'm in slightly less on fire Southern California.
Yeah, you were in Seattle the last time we recorded and have driven the whole length of the fiery coast. I joke, but I hope that everyone who's affected by these fires is staying safe and staying out of the smoke. It's pretty horrific.
Yeah, I don't know if you've been seeing it, but the skies of the Bay Area are like orange right now. People are posting about
Yeah.
that on Facebook. It does feel a bit like the final scenario of an Arkham campaign.
Yeah, there was a photo I saw going around Twitter that was just supposedly no filter, just a blood red sky, and it was like a picture of a UPS truck, just this blood red background. And I guess that was in Salem, Oregon. It's not even just
Mm.
California. And yeah, that was my first thought. Was it was something like something out of an Arkham scenario? Have we had the sky turn blood red yet? I feel like we must have.
Probably. I also think that if someone wants to
Yeah.
do like a fan scenario where instead of Doom, it's like air quality or something ticking up every turn, it's waiting to happen.
There's a whole cycle of Lord of the Rings, the card game, that uses, I think, temperature kind of on and off throughout that cycle. And yeah, an air quality mechanic is probably just what the next Arkham cycle needs. Yeah.
And I guess gender reveal parties can be an encounter card.
Yeah, that actually sounds like a joke that the designer of the game currently going by MJ. If you checked out their Twitter, sounds like something they'd put in. They'd appreciate.
Yep.
So we are here tonight to review the Arkham Horror, the card game investigator starter deck for Winifred Habbamock. Right? Did I say that right? Yeah, the Aviatrix.
Mm-hmm.
First, though, we've had a few other cool things you should check out on Optimal Play. I got to sit down with the designer of Deck of Wonders, which is an expandable card game on Kickstarter. And we did a card game or a card review in this style that we went on for about, I think, over an hour and a half. So we went places, but it was very cool because Steven can't bring the types of design stories and Easter eggs that he brings. So check that out if you enjoy just in-depth card discussions, even if it's a game that maybe you haven't discovered you like yet. I like it a lot, and yeah, that was awesome. And I'm not sure I can commit to a date, but I have Tellstones in hand. Oh, it's catching the light. It's a silver box. This is Riot Games' follow-up to Mechs vs. Minions. Instead of I don't know, what was the Mechs vs. Minions box? Like 4 feet by 4 feet? I don't know. I think it's the second biggest board game ever made after Gloomhaven, but I'm sure that's not actually true. But it's the biggest one I own. This one's tiny. I can't tell you what's in it yet, but we have a really fun video coming soon. So subscribe if you haven't. Check those out. I highly recommend them. Okay. This is the first. So Jacqueline Fine, we talked about previously. She was a new investigator to the card game, but not a new investigator to the Arkham universe, right? But Winifred is. Have you read her backstory or anything at all?
Yeah, so she's Native American, I believe.
She is, and I don't remember if I said she's the Aviatrix.
Yep. So she grew up in a reservation, and she's obviously a pilot, and she found some plane from some World War I pilot, and the owner was like, "Oh, you're great at this. Here, have this plane."
Yeah, and she lived happily ever after.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm skimming the. I don't know why the flavor text on the back ends with the phrase "single mutated pus-filled eye," but I'm sure it's unrelated.
I believe that's a Tinder profile that she swiped left on.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, so she is all new to the game as well. Want to read her investigator card for us?
Sure. So she is one will. So I think that's fin level, right?
Yeah, it's about as bad as it gets.
3 books, 3 fists, and 5 agility, evade, whatever that one's called.
Agility.
Um, so I've seen some discussion in terms of like is it called feats or wings? But
Feet, wingfoots.
yeah, wingfoots.
Mm.
She's a criminal. So I don't
Oh.
know why the background is green, but if you play Netrunner, the background should be blue.
Yeah, you're right. That's a little maybe a misprint.
Yeah. And as a fast action, if two different non-weakness cards you control are committed to this skill test, draw one card. Limit once per test. Ooh, so you can do that over and over in a turn.
Hmm.
And her Elder Sign effect is +1. After this test ends, for every 2 points you succeeded by, return a card you committed to this test to your hand. And she has 8 health and 7 sanity.
Okay, well, it sounds like she wants you to be committing a lot of cards to tests.
Yeah, yeah. And then just to finish it off, deck building wise, she's only rogue and neutral, which I think is the same as the Jacqueline and maybe
Mhm.
all of the starter deck ones.
I,
And she's got one signature and one signature weakness, just like everyone else, and 30
yep.
cards. So pretty standard.
Yeah, and I think class 0 through 5 and neutral 0 through 5 I think will be the deck building for all of the investigator starter decks.
Hmm.
And we didn't comment on this last time, but did you notice that Jacqueline's starter deck had 30 purple cards in it, or 31 if you count her signature? It's an interesting choice considering there are reprints in these packs. I'm surprised that there were no neutral cards. Like it's
Yeah.
weird to not just for these starter level decks to not put emergency caches in. I thought.
Yeah, and I think I mean at this point I probably don't need more of most of the neutrals, but when your collection is low, it is sometimes useful to have more unexpected courage, guts, manual dexterity, etc., as well as more
Sure.
emergency cache and flashlight. Like I feel like when you have maybe only one core set or you only have like one cycle, having more neutrals is helpful. So I actually
Hmm.
don't think it would have been a waste to have like 4 or 5 neutrals for a lot of new players. So I'm fine with this,
Yeah,
but I also would have been fine with them having like a handful of useful neutrals.
totally. Yeah, so it's just I guess I don't have strong thoughts on it. I just thought it was like I didn't even realize until after we finished recording about Jacqueline, like, oh, those were every single card in that pack was purple. Um, yeah, just kind of a little bit of an oddity is all, and it doesn't reflect what an actual deck will ever look like.
Mm.
Right? I'm sure some people have gone out of their way to create, all class card decks, but it's not
Mm.
the norm. You normally have some neutrals, if not off class. So
Yeah, I
it makes
mean,
them kind of
there's
strange.
I guess there's nothing stopping them from printing an investigator someday that can't take neutral. Like they do
Hmm.
specify specifically that all of these
Yes.
investigators can take neutrals, which allows them to make a investigator that can't take neutrals in the future.
Right.
But they have not done that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm not sure they ever will, but who
I
knows? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I could see like only allowing certain types of neutrals. Like otherwise, it does seem sort of meaningless why they've even specified neutral level
Yeah.
0 through 5 for everything. So maybe there'll be someone who can only take like illicit neutrals or only level 0 through 2 neutrals or something like that.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. If anything, I could see. I don't know. Maybe there's a character in Barkham who can't just take level 5 neutrals, so they can't take the Black Cat. I don't. uh, I don't know. But her ability itself is you draw a card whenever you put 2 different cards. It's an interesting little writer different cards. So you can't put in two. I was
So,
gonna say unexpected courages, but that's limit
well,
one per
two
test anyway.
opportunist is the one that they're probably worried about because then you're
Hmm.
getting a net gain of one card.
Oh, good
Um,
point.
so I think they probably figured, okay, if it's only one of them can be opportunist, then at least it's card even instead of card positive.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. Um, and then
But like, if you think about it, if it's card even and the other card is something like a quick thinking, then you're still getting positive stuff like every single test, which is crazy.
yeah, I think this seems wild. Like that has the downside of weaknesses are going to come up more because like how many tests do you take in a game? At least 20, right? Like, you're going to cycle through your deck pretty much an entire time due to her ability, I feel like.
And I mean, aside from will, which you're not really actively taking will tests generally, her other stats are fine. So, like, she could potentially just test, like, everything. Like, there's an enemy, so I'm going to fight them. I'll throw in 2 skill cards. I'll be at 6 to attack. That's fine. There's clues, so I'll toss in a couple skill cards. I'll be at 6 or 7 to investigate. Like, because she's pretty good at everything that is an active test, as long as there's something to do, like an enemy or a clue, she should be able to make tests all day long.
Yeah. And then her Elder Sign, +1 after this test ends for every 2 points you succeeded by. So this screams exactly the same thing as throw a lot of cards into her tests, right? Because it's not just return a card to your hand, it is return potentially multiple cards, which is bonkers. I feel like she is, and actually I think Harvey goes down this road too, but I feel like she's going to deal with the hand, like hitting the hand size limit quite a bit more than most investigators do.
Yeah, and I think any mystic that's playing with a Winifred has got to take Seal of the Elder Sign, because if you think about throwing in double or nothing, watch this, quick thinking, and then adding Seal of the Elder Sign, and then getting all of those effects twice, and then taking all those cards back. I mean, that is just such an absurd turn. So, really combos well with Seal of the Elder Sign.
And then is Winifred the first and only 5 agility investigator? Or am I...
Rita.
Oh, Rita's 5. Oh, she's just the first 5 agility rogue. That's right. Yep. Okay. So I'm hoping that there's some new tools in here to take advantage of that agility beyond just being a defensive stat, which is what it is most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think an active evade style is one that people have made work. It's definitely easy to ignore it. But I do think it is also possible to make it work, especially like in solo. It's a little more popular because you can often just ignore the monsters when you leave them behind. So.
All right. Her signature card, this looks like, it is similar to Jacqueline. It is in her class. This is a rogue card and is Winifred Habbamock deck only. Anything you can do better. It's innate, developed. It's a skill card that says commit only to a skill test you are performing. And it has 6 wild icons. To be honest, I did not know the card frame could fit this many wild icons. Or this many icons, period. I don't think we've seen above 4 before this. I mean, this is great. This card is insane. It is her signature, so it's not like it's an addition to the game outside of her. And it's super straightforward. I barely even have all that much to say about it. Do you?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically means don't draw an auto fail.
Right.
And, otherwise it's great.
Pair her with some seekers to help with that. Yeah, and then her Elder Sign hints at like succeeding by X, which and I think I've heard that is a theme in her starter deck as well. This is a good way. This is a good way to succeed by a large amount. Is just add +6 on one card.
And the one thing I'm trying to think, is there anything that references innate or developed? Those are 2 pretty common traits, but I can't.
I don't think developed is a very common trait. I couldn't name another developed card, although it's probably out there. Innate definitely is a very common trait.
Innate and developed. So developed is always with innate, and it's like all of like the brute force. Those ones are all innate and developed, where you do it without a weapon. Then I think the level 2 neutral cards are innate and developed, like guts, and I assume manual dexterity 2 will be in here. So those are kind of the innate and developed ones.
Interesting. So developed. So there is a pattern on kind of which cards it's appearing on. Which, I'll bet you will have a card that cares about the developed trait at some point soon. But I'm not familiar with any now. I don't think. Maybe in this deck.
Innate. The card that references innate is True Survivor, which is a survivor card. So yeah,
So she will
there
not be
may
playing
not.
it.
Yeah, unless I don't know if there's any rogue cards that like play an event from someone else's hand. There might be. Uh, the the let
Yeah.
you owe me a favor. Is that like you owe me one? Does that let you play an event?
Oh. Uh. I don't know. That seems like a long.
I don't know. That
That
seems
seems
like a
like a
great
a
great
long way
combo.
to go to get this out of your discard
Um,
pile.
yeah, yeah. So you owe me one. Allows you to play any non-weakness card, so you could play the True Survivor out of the survivor's hands.
So all you
Uh,
have to do to play anything you can do better multiple times is just partner with a survivor, run you owe me one, get them to run True Survivor in their deck, and then you play it from their hand with you owe me one. Simple,
exactly.
man.
That
Yeah,
easy.
that's a bomb combo. Okay.
I think
We might be seeing that tabooed.
yeah, I think Omi one, tabooed, exceptional, limit once per deck, all
There
those
we go.
things.
Yeah. Yeah. Overpowered card. Okay, she's not all just skills though. Well, she kind of is. Want to read arrogance?
Sure. Arrogance is a skill card with one wild icon, so it seems great so far.
Mm-hmm.
It's a flaw. You must commit arrogance to each eligible skill test you perform. This skill's icon subtract from your skill value instead of adding to it. And if this test succeeds, return this skill to your hand. Whoa, so you want the test to fail.
Sort of. So you read this whole thing without mentioning this is a weakness. Uh, right. This is Winifred's signature weakness, and that means it can't be discarded due to hand size or other. Yeah, like you have to get rid of it via committing it into skill tests. This reminds me a lot of Rex's weakness, where it makes you less likely to pass tests and then sticks around until it causes you to fail one. And honestly, his weakness is not bad at all.
Yeah, although I think this is worse in Rogue because in Rogue you want to win by like 2 or 3. So
Mm.
if this causes you to win by like 1, that's terrible because it doesn't go away and all your other effects that you threw into the skill test don't trigger.
That's a
So
good point. It
you
doesn't
really,
just
really
cause you to eventually fail, it causes you to not succeed by a lot for however many tests.
yeah,
Huh.
and unfortunately, she's actually pretty decent at all the active tests. Like, it's not like once you draw this, you can just be like, "Oh, I'm going to choose to take a will test," because, you know, unless someone has like a witch treachery on them, you can't just actively take will tests.
Right.
So you might be in a situation where you're like, "Man, every test that I can actively choose to take, I there's a decent chance that I like win, that I
Mhm.
accidentally win it."
Right.
Um, so that I could see that being frustrating.
Can I just say too? I love the art on this. This is Winnie in her stolen plane. I'm sure, like flying out of the tentacled maw. Oh wait, I think that's just San Francisco. It's a little anachronistic, but I think that's actually it looks just like those photos. So, um,
Yep, that is everyone trying to leave California right now.
yeah, right. Oh god, she has a basic weakness too. A new basic weakness. Um, Although despite it being a basic weakness, she is pictured on it with her plane also. But anyway, it's a skill card. It's a flaw. It says commit only to a skill test you are performing of any type that has no other cards committed to it. Other cards cannot be committed to this skill test. If this test fails, return this skill to your hand. If Reckless is in your hand at the end of your turn, reveal it and lose 2 resources. Um, hmm. Okay, so this one doesn't actively harm your tests. You just have to throw it into a success to get rid of it, otherwise you lose 2 resources.
Mm-hmm.
This I actually am blanking slightly on what Jacqueline's basic weakness did, but I remember thinking it was really tame. This feels really tame too.
Yeah, I mean it's a little bit annoying if you have arrogance as well because you
Mm-hmm.
can't commit it while you have arrogance because you have to commit arrogance. Um,
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, they do combo.
but but yeah, overall it doesn't seem that bad. It's like you might lose money sometimes, but yeah, it doesn't seem that bad.
Yeah, and I mean, the default time that you'll draw this is in the upkeep phase, and it triggers to cost you resources at the end of your turn, meaning you have a whole Mythos phase and your turn to pass a test with this in it.
Or just spend all your money. Like there's no punishment for
That's true too.
if you have no money.
Yeah, yeah. If you just keep your cash low, that's not usually the rogue style, but this is a basic weakness, so it can be it can be in anyone's deck. There are certain characters that can totally deal with it that way. Um, yeah, like it seems real tame. I think I said with Jacqueline that thanks to that basic weakness being so light that it was a buff to all investigators. I think same here. So yeah, maybe we're getting 5 kind of tame basic weaknesses, which I don't know. I wish this was harsher.
So we have not seen a non-skill yet. Do you think that this deck is just entirely skills?
Oh man. Uh, no, I think there's no way in hell that like a new player focused deck would be all skills, but that would be very funny, and I would love to see someone play the all skill Winnie deck.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it's like as if you just pass every test you take the entire game, basic actions are probably adequate. You probably don't need weapons or tools for investigation or anything like that. Yeah, just never fail.
They might need to open up her skills a bit, or her deck building a bit, to be able to take things like Vicious Blow and Brute Force.
True.
But it would have been cool.
Although hey, you don't. There's a lot of cards in here. You don't know what.
Yeah,
what
maybe
there's tools
like
are in here.
Yeah, Brute Force in here.
All right. Well, so that's all of her signature and the basic weakness. So on to her cards. Get us started.
Sure.
The skill streak is already over.
Oh yeah. Why couldn't they? I think lockpicks level 0 should be a skill. Missed opportunity. But yeah, this is lockpicks level 0, the 3-cost asset. Item, tool, and illicit. As an action, exhaust lockpicks. Add your feat value to your skill value for this investigation. And if you do not succeed by at least 2, discard lockpick. So it doesn't have any of the extra lives that the other lockpicks has.
This seems great. I mean, I play lockpicks pretty much in every deck that can run it because that card's really good. Once you get, is it level 2? What level's lockpicks?
Might only be 1.
Like, it might only be 1. It's pretty easy to buy after one scenario, I know.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time, because it's adding your skills are adding up to like 9 or more by the time you have some other asset just adding a +1 to something. And so it has those 3 uses, but you almost never, or at least in my experience, there's a lot of games where you just don't lose one of them. So I think that this is going to be just as good as leveled up lockpicks in a lot of games. But the ones where you draw that auto fail or something and it's not, is a big swing. Like you lose your investigation tool, it's gonna hurt.
Yeah, I mean, I think 1 XP is a pretty small price to pay for like auto fail protection. But I think this is still a totally reasonable choice for when you can't take lockpicks 1, such as the first scenario of a campaign, or if you're a Dunwich investigator who has pretty good agility, like maybe I guess hard to take, but Pete maybe. Like there's going to be characters that may take this just because they can't take lockpicks 1, but I do think that you would probably upgrade to lockpicks 1 pretty quickly.
Yeah. I mean, at the price of 1 XP, you're right. But I think that this card is totally serviceable. It still has like the issue with lockpicks if you're trying to. Well, I don't play a lot of True Solo. I was going to say in True Solo or something, is that it doesn't have, or it does not get extra clues, and it exhausts when you use it, right? So it's like, it's maximum once per round. This suffers from the same thing. So like, this isn't probably enough for her to get, but like having a couple copies of this in her deck is not enough. I assume that there's more investigation stuff in here. But yeah, it seems great. I love that this exists.
Yeah, and the other thing with lockpicks, why some investigators still take flashlight, is that there's a lot of shenanigans you can do with low shroud,
Mm,
combos well with Lola Santiago. Obviously, when you get to zero shroud, that's great because you can draw anything but an auto fail.
hmm.
So there are some shenanigans where like low shroud is a lot better than a high skill value. But I definitely think most rogues took it. So
For
pretty
sure,
solid.
for sure. Then next is a new gun. It is the
Mhm.
Mauser. I'm gonna say
Mouser was the Ninja Turtles robot that like had the pointy teeth. But I think this is a Mouser.
I think it was the name of a boss in Super Mario Brothers 2 also.
Mm.
Uh don't quote me on that. I could be wrong. But anyway, well, so named after one of those characters, this is a level, not a level 4, a 4 cost level 0 rogue asset. It has a lot of traits like most guns do. It's an item, a weapon, a firearm, and illicit. This one uses 5 ammo and says action exhaust Mauser C96 and spend 1 ammo. Fight, you get +1 combat and deal +1 damage for this attack. If you succeed by 2 or more, either ready Mauser C96 or gain 1 resource. And it takes 1 hand slot. What do you think?
This seems really good. I feel like there's a lot of times when you don't need to use a gun more than once, especially rogues, because like you're probably considered sort of more of a flex, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe your fighter does 2/3 of the damage and you do 1/3. Um, so a lot of times you'll be able to gain the resource instead of readying it. And then this also combos with, double or nothing to gain 2 resources. I'm sure there's lots of other effects in this deck that are going to want to succeed by 2. So that might just be kind of the default that you're doing for everything.
Yeah, I am surprised at how good this seems, because rogues have always had guns, but their guns have generally been not as good as guardians, because that's kind of shooting things in the face is kind of the guardian's thing. But this seems situationally quite a bit better than 45 automatic, which is kind of the guardian's staple one-handed gun from the core set. Right, that has the same boosts to combat and damage, but it uses 4 ammo. I think it costs the same, 4 resources. uh
Mm.
the upside is that you can use it more than once per turn with no restrictions. But this has the upside of giving you money as you shoot it, and at least in the hands of a rogue who are increasingly using a lot of awesome skill cards, uh a pretty good shot at overlooking its exhaustion um downside when you need it. Yeah, this card seems actually like kind of bonkers to me.
Yeah, and a crazy boost for Tony because Tony was
Hmm.
had a great stat line and a great ability, and he just had one downside compared to Guardians or Skids, which is that he didn't have very many good weapons.
Yep.
So for him to go from like worse weapons than Guardians to like, oh, this is actually a weapon that every Guardian would put 2 of in their starting deck if they had access to
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Just an enormous boost to him.
Yeah. Wow. Hmm. I mean, the part of me, and I wax on here now and then about how much I like the differentiation to be strong between the classes. Like, that part of me is kind of disappointed by this because I think that this is a quality of gun that maybe only Guardians should have, but it's a card I'm going to use a lot because it's great.
Yep. So the next card is, I think, a reprint.
It is.
Switchblade Zero.
Mm-hmm.
1 cost, fast. If you succeed by 2 or more, deals +1 damage. Not a very good card, except for sometimes Tony would take it.
No, I am surprised to see this one in here because Switchblade was a bad card when it was just the
I
corset card pool.
I think they're going to include every card that's succeed by 2. Is my guess.
Oh, you just think they think MJ searched Arkham DB for the phrase "succeed by" and just like throw them all in,
Yeah.
design some new ones, and they're done. Like, yeah, I could see that because the next card is another reprint. It's the Lucky Cigarette Case, which is an asset. It's an accessory that says after you succeed at a skill test by 2 or more, exhaust it to draw a card. Um, this seems. I don't know that I would put this in Winifred's deck because she already has such good card draw. um, I don't know that this is what I would use her accessory slot for, but yeah, it's a good card. Makes sense in her deck in that whole. Well, it's a succeed by card.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't put two of them in here
Hmm.
because she's going to draw through her deck pretty quickly. You should be able to find that one copy pretty easily,
You're
and the
right.
second copy is pretty dead. So maybe
Yeah,
one copy, but definitely not two.
totally agree. The next one looks new though.
Yeah, so Lonnie Ritter, a unique ally, a feisty mechanic, is not a gameplay mechanic. She's literally a mechanic. Is a 4-cost asset with a fist icon, and she gives you +1 fist. And as a fast action, exhaust Lonnie Ritter and spend a resource. Choose an item asset controlled by an investigator at your location. Heal 1 damage from that asset and 1 horror from Lonnie Ritter. And she has 2 damage soak and 3 horror soak. Um,
Okay, my
it's
question.
interesting because
Go ahead.
oh, I was gonna say that I don't associate item assets with having health. Like I guess there's a few, but certainly when I think of the classic item assets, I think of things like flashlights,
Yeah.
backpacks, magnifying glasses, guns, none of which can take damage. So
Yeah, so I am going to mention a preview of the Innsmouth campaign that has been in some streams and things. So skip forward like 30 seconds if you don't want to hear it. There's at least one scenario revolving around vehicles, and like we'll be driving cars and things. So it is possible that those, like these were, I imagine that these were designed either around the same time or after the Innsmouth cycle was, and so I think that there's a good chance that we are going to see cars soon. So it will make sense that the. Although, man, it would be weird to see an actual card and see an actual car as a card and have it be item traded. That would feel a little weird. I don't think of cars as items, but anyway.
yeah, I didn't see the preview. I would think it would be like shoes, where it's a new slot, like
Mm.
a sort of pseudo slot where there's no icon, but
They are
limit one
only, at
vehicle.
least as far as previewed, they're only story cards. They aren't going to be going in our decks.
Got it.
Uh,
The
but
Jacqueline did have an item that was could take damage. Those like the robes.
the robes, sure, and leather coats,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like and trench coat and bulletproof vest. Like they're a neutral one. So like it's a thing to have items take damage. Like that's not unusual. The thing is they're usually clothing. So it's a little weird for the mechanic to like not only heal damage from them but heal horror from herself
Yeah, and
because she's done some like she's tailored your coat for you.
the other thing is that historically using allies for soak has almost always been better than using armor for soak. Part of that is just charisma is such an easy thing to take.
Mhm.
There's not a ton of cost there, and allies tend to do other things for you. So I almost always just use allies for soak instead of
Yeah.
armor, unless it's someone like Yorick that can like play the leather coat endlessly or something.
Sure. Yeah. And I've got to think that we are going to see an item with damage soak in this deck, right? Like
Mm.
I kind of doubt that this card would be here if there weren't something in here. So maybe we'll find a new one because I can't think of a rogue one that currently exists that would be a reprint. So I look forward to that. And then maybe we'll have a little, maybe flavorfully that will make sense too. Maybe we'll have a little bit of a little bit of a better understanding soon. I what strikes me as weird about this character, and it's great. Like I love this woman, Lonnie. What she is the same person as Daniela Reyes, right? Another investigator in the Arkham universe that's been in a couple of the other board games. She is a mechanic, and like it's surprising that they made an ally that is just like a this is clearly another investigator with her name swapped. I
Well, you don't. You don't think that they're gonna put Daniela as a investigator
no,
later, and that's
I
why they didn't use the
I
name?
do think that they will, and that's why they didn't put her here. And it's actually always been a little surprising to me that we don't have the investigators as ally cards. Like Lord of the Rings does that. It has heroes appear as allies. Marvel Champions does that. This is the only cooperative LCG that doesn't have its main characters also appear as side character options for your deck. So, uh, since that's always surprised me that the game doesn't go that direction, I'm kind of surprised in that for the same reason that this isn't just Daniela. Clearly that's something that they decided not to do, and that's why this isn't. But yeah, it's just a strikingly similar like denizen of Arkham, right? To it would be like if we saw another like brown haired or brown shoulder length haired woman in a white dress who was Sally Mae the psychic, right?
Yeah.
And she was just like Jacqueline in every way except for her name. Yeah, that's all. That's the only reason I think this is funny. Yeah, I think it's a great ally. Rogue doesn't actually have a huge selection other than Leo of level 0 allies that are all that strong. So I'm glad to have a new one.
Yep.
Oh, I found an item with damage soak. This is a leather jacket. It's
not a coat.
Oh, is the other one leather coat? I was about to say
Yeah.
that this was an alternate class version of the same card, but you're right. It is leather coat in Survivor, huh?
Completely different.
Completely different. Okay. Well, this leather jacket is a 2-cost asset. It's a rogue card. It's an item and armor. It's fast and has 2 damage soak, and sits in the body slot. You think wearing that makes you look like the cat's meow? Nah, I already know I'm the cat's meow. This just lets everyone else know. It's good. It's we don't usually get like back and forth dialogue in flavor text. I like it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so the obvious comparison is a leather coat. How do you think this stacks up?
So costs 2 more, but is fast. That seems like an okay trade for a rogue. I mean, she has 8 health soak, and if you're playing Lonnie gives you 2 health soak. So like, how much more health soak do you need?
I don't think it's called soak if it's on the investigator. I think she just has 8 health.
Fair enough. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm also curious why she needs so much damage protection. And then I think leather coat is, I mean, obviously they're different classes. I was just saying different classes should have different strengths and weaknesses, so this is fine, but I don't think this is as good a card as leather coat. Fast does not mean that you can play it out. Fast on an asset does not mean you can play it out of turn unless it says otherwise. So it's not like you can be like, oh, this treachery that I'm taking a test for is going to hurt me. I'm going to throw that down this leather jacket in a player at window. It doesn't work that way. You still have to play it on your turn. So for that, it's kind of just like +2 resources, -1 action. That's kind of the going exchange rate for rogue abilities sometimes. But yeah, I don't think it's as good.
Yeah, and I'm even thinking of other rogues, and the only one that I can think of that really has a health deficiency is maybe Safina. In general, most of them are fine on health.
Yeah, they mostly are pretty hardy, and then also are largely pretty good at evasions. They don't take as much damage as some classes.
And the classic thing is that treacheries that cause health damage are agility tests. So,
yeah.
You know, why are you failing those?
Right. Yeah, so I'm sure that this card will find a place, and there's not a lot of competition for the body slot. I can't think of any.
I mean, fine clothes in some scenarios.
True. Decent. Yeah. Is there even a rogue card that sits in the body slot? Is there another one?
Probably not.
Yeah, this might be the first, which, considering that the rogues lean into kind of the archetype of like, yeah, I'm the rich person and have all these fancy things, I'm kind of surprised by that they don't have cards that represent their clothes until this moment. But okay, so I mean, yeah, just because it's in a slot that rogues seldom use, I'm sure it will get used plenty. What's next?
Ooh, it's a level 0 version of Streetwise that is not permanent. It's cost 0 instead. So it lets you spend 2 resources to get +2 books for a skill test, or spend 2 resources to get +2 feats for a skill test.
This took me a second because my brain processed this as a reprint of Hard Knocks, the core set rogue talent, just because I was like, oh, it's level 0. It has the talent spend resources thing. But that's not what this is at all. It costs, since Streetwise was tabooed, this costs 8 XP less, right? And doesn't have as good, I think that it's 2 resources for +2 instead of 2 resources for +3, which actually makes this worse than the talents that go 1 for 1 because it doesn't have that flexibility.
Yeah, but it costs 0 instead
it costs
of
0
costing 2.
Yeah. And is access to skills that Hard Knocks, I think specifically intellect and Hard Knocks, I think is agility and combat. So obvious difference there. This seems good. The price is right for it. I think that we were talking with Jacqueline when we saw an upgrade to the Mystic core set talent that the core set talents have kind of not really kept up with the growing card pool. And I think this is cool. This is good. This is better than those just because it costs 0. And so you're more likely to have money to spend on actually pumping your skills. I think this is cool.
Yeah, I don't think that the downside of having to spend 2 is that bad, and the 0 cost is pretty nice. So the only thing I could see is Preston. If you're playing Taboo, he's definitely looking for new ways to boost stuff. And you maybe play this instead of Dig Deep or Hard Knocks, but it is kind of funny that all 3 of those boost your agility. So if you play all 3 different ones,
he is a rogue. Yeah.
You get agility 3 different times. So if there was something that was like totally complementary skills to either Hard Knocks or Dig Deep, that would be even better.
This strikes me as like a great Wendy card too. Like some of the classes that can take this off class. I think that this might, because Streetwise as a level 3/8 permanent is not something that characters in other classes have access to, and they do have access to this. So I actually could see this getting a lot of play because so many investigators can run it compared to the previous Streetwise.
True. Yeah.
Next in the deck is Cheap Shot, which is a reprint. It's a 2-cost event that adds your agility to your skill for an attack and automatically evades if you succeed by 2 or more. Has never been that impressive a card. Probably still isn't. 1 damage and an evade is not that much better than an evade.
Yeah, it's, again, MJ just copied all of the succeed by 2s and added them.
Yeah. Okay. What's next?
Another reprint, Daring Maneuver, 0-cost event. Play when you would succeed at a skill test. Now you get +2 skill value for this test. So helps you just ensure those succeed by 2s.
I am glad that you said this was a reprint because I was staring at it like, this looks kind of familiar. I don't think I've ever played this card.
I haven't either. I feel like going all in on +2 to the extent that you would play this card was generally not the best strategy, but maybe now it is a really valid strategy. I think that having some succeed by 2s, such as playing, maybe some quick thinkings, maybe playing Switchblade level 2, like that was fine, but I think going all in on it was never quite like a tier 1 deck.
Yeah, so maybe whether it's Winifred in particular or whether new cards in this pack that expand that archetype make it more of a thing. Maybe it's going to be more widespread and this will actually come out of binders. It seems like you've got to play it in a deck that is just all about this though, right? Like it's not going to take a card slot in a deck that like, well, yeah, you've got Switchblades and Lupara, or not Lupara, Derringers in it. Like you've got a couple things that care about it, but not that many. You're not going to run this just for that reason.
Yeah.
Okay, it does. Maybe I just really like the vehicle escaping tentacles archetype, but I like the art on this a lot too.
Definitely.
Slip Away is another reprint. It is a 2-event evade. It's actually, I don't know if I ever connected these dots, but this is very similar to Cheap Shot. It adds your intellect to an evasion attempt, and if you succeed by 2 or more, the elite or the enemy, if it's not elite, does not ready during the next upkeep phase. I I actually think that this is more interesting than Cheap Shot because evading enemies for 2 turns can open up a lot of mobility and just kind of free you up for to do a lot more things than you can do if you're having to evade something every turn. I don't know. Have you played this?
I've never played it, but yeah, I mean, if you're playing like Forgotten Age, maybe trying to get no vengeance, could definitely see the point of this. Otherwise, like it seems like situationally useful, but maybe not worth a slot in a deck for a lot of scenarios because it's so situational.
Yeah. Okay, but it went in the Succeed by 2 deck, so this next one is, ever since Daring Maneuver, I've been like second guessing myself on every card. Like, wait, is this reprint? But no, this next one's new, right?
Oh, Pilfer?
Yeah.
Yes, this is definitely new.
Okay.
Pilfer is a 4-cost asset. It's a trick, so I believe Rita can take it.
The 4-cost events. I think you misspoke there.
4-cost event. Yeah. It's a trick. Investigate. This investigation uses agility instead of books. If you succeed, discover 2 additional clues at your location. Ooh, so 3 clues.
And this one is not a Succeed by 2 mechanic, which is...
Yeah.
I had to read it twice to be like, oh wait, so this doesn't say Succeed by 2? Okay.
So this is like just a very expensive way to get a lot of clues. So it actually kind of competes with like Intel Report.
Yeah. In a way though, like it kind of fills the role of Lola a little bit, like but letting you almost buy clues off a tough to investigate location. And how many times a lot of the time you run Lola and only buy 3 clues in a game and spend a lot more than 4 doing it. I don't know. This actually, it reads a little underwhelming for its price, but I could see this card being better than it looks.
Yeah, and it's funny, even though it doesn't have Succeed by 2 written on it, you're still tossing a ton of skill cards into this because if you're paying 4, you want to be really sure that you beat everything but an auto fail.
Yeah, you do not want to fail a test that you're paying 4 to initiate. Agreed.
So, for example, Winifred's agility is 5. She's still going to toss 2 skill cards in when she does this because, being only +2 against a 3 shroud, that's just too risky for a 4-cost event. So, like, she's definitely going to pump up to like 8 and like so that even if she draws -5 or something, she succeeds. So it sort of does fit that like blow the skill test away style, I guess, because whenever you're spending 4 cost on something with a skill test, you toss skill cards into that test.
Yeah, and this does not add your skills together like some of these other events do and like lockpicks do. This is, in Winifred's case, this is just a +2 to her investigate skill, right? Because her intellect is 3 and her agility is 5. So yeah, it needs more support, but it has a big payoff. I'm interested to try it.
And actually, for a lot of rogues, it's not even a boost. So for Finn and Jenny, it's the same stat.
Yeah, I think I would not play this in Finn at least. I think I think the skill boost has got to kind of be there to be part of the value this card brings in my mind.
Yeah, I think Rita, if you don't have anything better to spend the money on,
because it's a trick, yeah.
This could be a cool one because she does have 5 agility.
Yeah, she's not like notoriously wealthy to be playing a lot of 4-cost events, but you're right. She can play it. It would be interesting with her. Next is Sneak By. See, now this is the cost I like. This is a 0-cost rogue event with 2 agility pips on it. It's a trick also, and it says evade when this action begins. Gain 2 resources. Oh man, this is -2.
Yeah.
Being told not to do something was generally Winifred's cue to proceed as planned. There's her story. I mean, we glossed over it, but yeah, it's about her like breaking into a barn/hangar and stealing a plane. That is like what all of this art is of. It's like her flying that plane, her breaking in to steal it. It is a very I don't know what her novella would be about because you can't pad this event out to 150 pages.
And One thing to also note about this is it's two skill icons. So you can actually think of this
Yes.
as a card that says either gain 2 resources or gain 2 skill for an evade test.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Interesting. Because yeah, I've pointed that out that anything with double icons on it is it's kind of like it's an alternative to, in this case, manual dexterity, where like that one has the upside of draw a card, but anything else with double agility has an upside of, well, you can play it for this other purpose. Um, when you do play it, it's actually like the same efficiency as an emergency cache, right? It's giving you 2 resources and an action. That action just has to be evade. Um, hmm. I think it's. Oh man, this is tough. That sentence was going to be, I think this is worse than emergency cache because it pigeonholes you into it. Like you can only play it when you would evade. But the 2 agility icons are a lot better than emergency cache.
Yeah, I think I like it better because of the flexibility. Like emergency cash when you draw it late in the game, and you're already rich is just
Yeah.
like such a bummer. Like definitely emergency cash turn 1 will
Yep.
take over this every time.
Yeah, like
But
you mulligan for emergency cache, you will get rid of this in a mulligan. You want this late.
yeah, but yeah, I think that most of the game, mid game, late game, this is a much better card.
Interesting. Okay. I'm not sure I agree, but there's room in a deck for both. So even
I
though
mean,
the powers that be may not have gifted Winifred with any emergency caches in her product, you can give them to her yourself.
the argument for emergency cash is that maybe good, like really good cards in the beginning of the game are more important than good cards in the late game. Like, I feel like
Mm,
it can take a while to recover from a bad start, whereas a dead draw near the end of the game often doesn't matter.
yeah.
So I guess that would be the argument for emergency cash.
Uh. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's for that reason that it's like I would just be so sad to find this in my opening hand, and to me that's a big downside to a card. If I don't want it in my opening hand, does it belong in my deck? Like I think it has to really justify itself otherwise. And yeah, this has gotta really pleasantly surprise me, I think, to make the cut on that basis.
Yeah. All
Um
right. The next card is Nimble. It's a skill card with 1 agility icon. It's innate. So again, you can play You Owe Me One on True Survivor to get this back. And for each point this skill test succeeds by, after it resolves, you may immediately move to a connecting location to a maximum of 3 times. So this is her version of elusive, and it's pretty cool.
yeah. Immediately move to a connecting location up to 3 times, one for each point the skill test succeeds by. That's a lot of movement.
Yeah. So let's see. You evade. So you have 5 evade. This gets you to 6. So you have evade something with like 2 evade. You draw -2, and you move 2 times after the evade.
Mm-hmm.
So just like elusive, you're not spending an action specifically for this. Um, and I guess one thing is, unlike elusive, enemies I guess, would they engage you?
They would come with you. They would not opportunity. They
Well,
would
not
not.
not the one you evaded. That one would stay
Correct.
there. But any ones that were in the middle of where you wanted to move to would come with you.
That and any others that were engaged with you would come with you.
Yeah, yeah,
Which is a pretty big downside compared to elusive. That said, elusive was overpowered and got tabooed, and so like
yeah.
cards can exist that are not as good as elusive, and that's fine. This is really, yeah, it's definitely not as good, but it's really interesting. And
Yeah, and of course, as a skill card, it does get you halfway to your Winifred draw. So some synergy there.
I think to me the worst thing about the card is that it's an agility skill, meaning you can't play it as an event. You can't do it whenever you want. You have to pair it with an evasion, which may not always be either appealing because it's an alert enemy or something, uh, or it may not always be available. That said, this combines with something like no, it does not combine with lockpicks. You can't Yeah, adding agility does not. I was about to say this combines with all these things that are adding her agility that we've seen in this deck, but that's not actually true, is it?
So what this actually combines with really well is wait, you can use this with lockpicks, right?
No, because lockpicks, it's an intellect test. It's just you
Oh,
add
you
your
can only
agility skill. That does
okay.
not allow you to play agility icons in.
So this actually then my other thought is it actually goes well in a deck that lockpicks isn't very good in, which is an ornate bow deck, because then you can just
Hmm.
choose to shoot arrows at people and then move over to the next monster who's three turn spaces away, knock another arrow and kill that monster.
Yeah, with that
Um,
specific example, you would be charging in and potentially engaging an enemy without an arrow in your bow.
well,
So like, there's
I mean, if we're talking about 3 or 4 player, where you're maybe
okay.
protecting like two non-fighters, like maybe a seeker and a mystic. So like, you kill the enemy that's engaged with your mystic,
Mhm.
then you move across the map to kill the enemy that's engaged with your seeker.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Anything that you can put into your deck that can convert, that can let you test agility for other purposes, is great. Rogues are not mystics; they don't have as many just like test your willpower to do whatever the hell you want cards. But yeah, I think you're
And
exactly right. I think that's where you want to play
ornate
this.
bow, I think, gives you a +2, so like you should be able to hit that succeed by 3.
Yeah,
And then of course, quick thinking should give you like the actions if you need to like fire 3 arrows in one turn. Like rogues have ways to do that. Um, Whereas like previously, ornate bow was mostly a Rita card,
mm.
and it was a little bit harder for her to have crazy number of actions
I don't
unless she
know
was
if I'd
really.
agree with that. Ornate Bogo's pretty good in a lot of decks because it gives, yeah, it's either +2 or +3 to your
But
agility
I
when you
actually,
use it.
yeah, but because it has 2 hand slots, like I actually didn't see it in Rogue that often.
Hmm,
Like Finn, for example, like wants to use his hand slots on investigating.
that's
So
true.
I saw it a lot in Rita, and I actually saw it some in Ursula.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't see it in Rogues that often, and I think that she might be the first Rogue that like has a really all in on ornate bow strategy.
Yeah, interesting. I think that's a great point. Um, I've lost track of who is reading next.
I think you're next.
I'm next. All right. Daredevil. I recognize this. Is this new and I just remember it from a preview? I think that's the
Uh,
case.
Maybe.
Yeah, because this
Oh,
says
the flavor text reference is Winnie, so.
oh, yeah, you're right. So it must be a new card if it's referring to Winnie. This is Daredevil. It's a fortune. It's practiced. After you commit Daredevil to a skill test, discard cards from the top of your deck until you discard a rogue skill you can commit to this test. Commit it. Shuffle each weakness that was discarded by this effect back into your deck. Um, I don't think it's good. I think it's cool. I think it's fun. We've said before I like these like slot machine like kind of roll the dice type cards. Mm, like you just need to have a lot of wild skills in your deck for this to be interesting, right? Otherwise, you're just gonna hit a card that doesn't match your test.
No, no, no. It says
Oh,
until
you
you discard
you
a rogue
can
card that you
commit.
can commit.
Oh yeah.
So,
Okay.
so like oh, and let's not forget that her signature, unlike all the previous ones, is a rogue skill. So it can find your signature.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Uh. Oh. Also, I was so doubting my sanity that I just looked it up, which I try not to do during these videos. Daredevil 2 existed already. It was in Point of No Return.
Yeah, I think the difference is that this one you shuffle each weakness, and that one you shuffled all cards that were discarded. So the shuffle
Hmm.
part was better about level 2. This one kind of thins your deck of non weaknesses.
Right. Hmm. I think now that this exists, is it the same icons? Yeah, one wild. I
Mm-hmm.
think now that this exists, you're probably not going to spend XP just to prevent that shuffling your weaknesses back in your deck thing.
And there might be like some situations where this is better. Like if you maybe want to cycle your deck really often, like maybe you do want to reuse that signature 3 or 4
Mhm.
times, and for some reason you're not going with the super OP you owe me one true survivor combo,
Yeah.
you might want to like discard your deck frequently to and then find your signature and then discard your deck again and find your
Yep.
signature again. Like there might be some kind of cycle deck that's really good.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and especially in this deck, I completely agree with you. Like we kind of covered her weaknesses are not that bad, so shuffling those back into your deck if your goal is to get through your deck, so you can take that horror and use all your skills again, particularly use the best of your skills another time. Um, I think that's fine. I think this is yeah, now that you've corrected me that it looks for a card that matches, so it will benefit, and it's like basically minimum 2 icons then,
And it's
right?
actually a
Like this
reason
is
to maybe consider not putting wilds in your deck, because imagine if your signature is your only wild, and you're testing something like will, then you're
uh-huh.
guaranteed to find your signature.
Oh, that's
Um,
interesting.
so yeah, it could there could be some decks that like don't actually play wilds besides Daredevil in the signature.
Um, and finally, this is practiced, so you can play practice makes perfect. Find this, and then this finds something else. All of a sudden, you have 7 cards in a skill test.
Oh,
That's kind of wild.
actually, but really though, the serious like non jank answer like that this is going to be used to find opportunist in a lot of decks.
Mm.
So I think you probably do play opportunist as a wild, but you would want to limit. You wouldn't want to play like unexpected courage, because if your whole deck is around, I toss lots of skill cards in
Mhm.
and I succeed by a bunch, and then I get opportunist back. You really don't want to accidentally find unexpected courage instead. Uh,
Yeah, and do you know this is the first card I can think of that raises this question, although maybe there's others. What's the timing on this ability? It says after you commit, but can you commit this, resolve it so that you know what's going to get added, and then continue committing more cards accordingly? Or do you commit them all simultaneously? Any idea? I don't know.
I would I would read it as like it happens immediately after you commit that, and so you could still commit others,
Yeah.
but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a pretty basic rules question that just doesn't come up very often is are you committing cards one by one or are you committing them simultaneously?
yeah.
And I don't know the answer.
I also just realized you can still play Unexpected Courage because Daredevil will not find it. It's not a rogue skill card. Um,
Oh,
so
true. Oh, interesting. And then kind of the other idea that came to me is if you're playing something like Rogue Mandy, right? Like if you're playing this off class, you can
mhm.
put one other card in that's the rogue skill. So this will always find it. I don't
That's
I
true. So
I
so
haven't
Mandy
developed I
cannot.
haven't developed this thought enough to like know what that would be in Mandy, but
Well, I mean, so Mandy can't take Daredevil 2, but she could use this to find the 3 aces. Of course, you only want to, you would commit this and
and
two
the
other
other two
copies of three
aces.
aces
Yeah.
to find the third one. But either way,
Yeah. I doubt the juice is worth the squeeze on that. But there's a janky opportunity there in playing this off class with just the card you wanted to find as your other rogue card.
yeah, the one if this had search instead of discard until, then this would be
Oh
great
my
in
gosh.
Mandy.
Yeah. It's probably why it doesn't.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, all right. Last and many would consider at least, but we've sure talked about it a lot already tonight. What's the last card in this pack?
So Opportunist level 0
Mm-hmm.
is a wild icon. You can only commit it to your skills, and if you succeed by 3 or more, return Opportunist to your hand instead of discarding it. So this is one that was terrible when it came out. It
Just
maybe
when it came out.
I mean for a while, yeah. It got like a little better over time, but I think really the leveled up version that I think only had to succeed by 2. That one was definitely more playable.
Mhm.
Um, And as you saw more effects like cigarette case, quick thinking, the style became a little better. However, it was still Opportunity Zero still was never like an amazing card. I do think with her, the fact that her whole style is so based on overkill, and the fact that you can find it with Daredevil, I assume this is going to just be a 2 of in every Winnie deck.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're right. Yep, I don't even have anything to add. I think you summed it up. This is a mediocre card in most circumstances that in this archetype that Winnie wants to play is great. Yeah, it combos with her ability because when you're returning it with your hand over and over, you are committing 2 different cards into almost every test. Uh, yeah, yeah, I'm excited to see opportunists come out of the binder and see what I'm sure will be a lot of action now.
And you can commit both opportunists to the test. It will not trigger Winnie's ability, but it does. Committing both does help you get to that +3.
Yeah.
So I imagine
sure leaves you vulnerable to an auto fail though. Takes away all your opportunists.
Sure.
Okay. That's it. That is Winnie and her 33 cards. What are your thoughts on your final thoughts on her deck?
I really like her. I feel like I personally enjoyed the skill card heavy decks such as Min and if you bought the Silas book, he's another skill card based one. And also Grizzly Totem is a card that I've enjoyed. Yeah, I kind of enjoy like skill card heavy builds, so she seems pretty fun.
Yeah, I think she like her card and her signatures seems great. Her ability to have you draw a card per test, like most not most, but many investigators that have efficiency based abilities have like 1 action's worth, and she can draw you 3 if not more cards per turn, which is insane. And actually makes me I don't know. I feel like that's going to have to be limit once per phase or something next taboo. Probably not the taboo list that is due any day now, but the one after that. I don't know. She seems pretty busted to me out of the gate. That said, you set her cards aside, I think this deck seems like garbage. do you like
I don't think it's garbage, but I definitely think that there are things that could be tightened up. Like there are things.
What do you think this deck is supposed to do? It has 2 lockpicks that are subject to being discarded and like very little other clue gathering. It has 2 guns with ammo and 2 pretty bad weapons. And a bunch of damage soak for some reason. Like, I don't understand what this deck is supposed to do. I guess just pass a lot of tests and do basic actions.
Yeah, I mean, I think it can do a little bit of everything. Like you should be able to just investigate for 1 clue by like committing your opportunists. But quick thinking is not in here, huh? That's a strange one. Yeah, that actually seems very strange. I mean, assume quick thinking and double or nothing are going to go in every.
Yeah, she's like the skill investigator more than anyone we've seen yet, and she has only 6 skill cards in her deck, which seems low.
Yeah. And yeah, the Lonnie leather jacket combo does not seem necessary for her. Like,
and the flavor is nonsense that still bothers me. We need items that it makes sense for a mechanic to fix.
Or the ally should be a tailor instead of a
yeah. Well, she's a mechanic that just fixes your clothes for you. So yeah, I mean, and then she has all the. Sorry, go ahead.
I think it would work okay. Like, I think you would be able to succeed on most tests, by committing a few cards. So I think it would work okay, but there's definitely a lot you could optimize.
Yeah, and then I'm wondering where she gets the money to pay for all these cards, right? Like she only has 6 skill cards, which are free. The rest of these cards cost 2, 3, 4 mostly as I'm fanning out this deck, and the only econ is this slip by to turn an evasion into +2 resources. That's it.
That's a great point. Yeah. Cards like Cheap Shot and the four cost event, like they make sense when you're playing a lot of econ, but they don't
Hmm.
actually really make sense in this deck.
Yeah, and maybe, I mean, I don't know what the design process on these was. Maybe these investigator decks were kind of balanced to feel on equal footing, and her card itself is so good that the deck is bad, like in order to maintain balance. I I don't know.
That seems like a really bad way to balance, though, because
Oh yeah,
then
it's a
then as
that would
soon
be
as
a
you put good cards in,
yeah.
um, it's real bad.
I'm a little baffled by the deck, even though I think that there were a good handful of real interesting and exciting cards in here. I don't think that I think that I will go out of my way to play a campaign with each investigator deck in the coming weeks and months, but I don't expect to be very impressed by this one.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think if you want to, if you decide to play all of them as they are in the box, the good thing is with this one, unless you're limiting yourselves to just the upgrades, you can at least take adaptable and start taking out
Uh,
these weird cards.
no, I think when I say though that I want to play a campaign with each one, I mean using just their upgrades too. Which,
Oh,
hey, maybe her
interesting.
upgrades have adaptable in them. I don't know. Didn't Jacqueline have
Yeah,
one reprint upgrade, or am I? No, maybe not.
yeah. I
Hmm,
don't know.
maybe not. Okay, well, maybe her upgrades will change everything. Maybe, maybe the idea was that some of these cards are so bad, or there are such glaring weaknesses that it will feel great when these upgrades shore up those weaknesses. I don't know, but that is a subject for another video. Uh, so with that, while
Oh,
Steven
I
cocks his
will.
head
Okay,
and hmm?
what? Okay, one thing. So all these expensive cards that aren't very good. Um, I
Uh-huh.
will point out that her ability works when you commit two non-weakness cards. It doesn't say two non-weakness skill cards.
Sure. Yeah.
So you can commit all of these bad expensive cards that draw other bad expensive cards to commit to more skill tests. So
That is absolutely right, and I think that that is true. Like I think you would approach Winnie's deck building somewhat differently because I think much more than your average investigator, you are going to cycle through a lot of her deck for their skill icons, even the events and the assets that you've put in.
the other investigator like that is Patrice. Like with
Yep.
Patrice, like half the time you toss her assets into skill tests.
Yeah, I've never
Um,
committed as many shrivelings to tests for their combat icon as I have with Patrice, right?
so these two maybe play like that is the difference between Winifred and like Min. Min, I think it has to be a skill card
Mhm.
for her ability to work, whereas Winifred's ability, you just chuck in cards.
Yeah, so I mean, you're right that that is maybe a reason that this deck won't play as poorly as I think it reads, but I don't think that that is an excuse to put a bunch of bad, too expensive cards in your deck.
It's true. I mean, it's more exciting to draw cards when the cards you're drawing are good.
Yeah,
So
yeah, and it's got to be an interesting design challenge too, right? And Marvel must have this too. Is there's this tension of like, well, as you're designing the cards and designing this product, well, what does the deck want to have in it versus what cards do you want to add to the game? Like those are two different goals that you're trying to accomplish with one set of cards. And so it can't be easy. And I think that so far, like these two we've looked at are doing a fine job. But it definitely leads to kind of some like I'm giving them a little side eye. Like I don't quite understand a few of the decisions here.
yeah, one of the decisions that they made was to only include two ofs, even for reprints.
Hmm.
Um, so I can see the argument both ways. Like on the one hand, one ofs can be kind of frustrating because you're like, man, I don't have a full play set. On the
Yeah.
other hand, for these reprints, like for something like Lucky Cigarette Case that you're never really going to want two of,
Yeah.
um, for the new players, having two of just makes your deck a little worse. And for the veteran players, well, having a third
They already
copy
have
versus
it.
having a fourth copy, who cares?
Yeah.
So like I maybe would have just done one of for some of the reprints that
Interesting.
are
Yeah.
not super key. Just one option that they could have done, like something like Cheap Shot and Lucky Cigarette Case. If those had each been one ofs, and then there had been a couple of different, like if then there had been two Quick Thinkings, which is a
Yep.
card that you actually do want two of, um, that might have made the deck a little more dynamic.
Yeah, that's a great point. It seems to be a decision that was a blanket decision that was made to have 2 copies of every card in these decks, and I think there's something to be said there about that being like one of the first mistakes that I think a lot of people make deck building is throwing one of every card that seems interesting in. And I have to, not I have to, but I sometimes, the advice that I give to early deck builders, someone that I recently taught the game and said, okay, now you build your deck and for next time we play, is like if a card is worth putting into your deck, it's highly likely that it's worth having 2 copies, right? And so it could just be like kind of wanting to not teach the wrong lesson to young deck builders. Young again, I use that metaphorically. young in the game.
Yeah.
That's kind of the only reasoning for it that I can see.
Yeah, and it could also be in my eyes, an opportunity to show like when there is a legitimate case for a one of, such as Lucky Cigarette case. Like it's nice to have, but it's not super key to the strategy. Yeah. And the second copy is kind of dead. So yeah. Like to me, that is a legitimate use case for a one of.
Totally agree. All right, with that, we're over an hour. I think these are larger than your average Mythos pack, at least in discussion fodder. Let's wrap it up there. Thank you for joining me, Steven, as always. This was the third. If this is the first one of these breakdown card review. One of these first impression videos that you've seen. This is our 3rd out of 10 videos about these investigator starter decks. We are diving deep. As well as I've been branching out into having people on to have this kind of conversation about more games lately. So please subscribe to Optimal Play if you enjoyed this. Like it, comment, all of that helps us out a lot. Thank you for watching. Till next time, be optimal.
Bye.